At CommScope, it is our mission to enable communications through a constant focus on innovation, agility, and integrity. We transform networks with efficient solutions that optimize network performance and speed deployment. Our global team of greater than 20,000 employees, innovators, and technologists have empowered customers in all regions of the world to anticipate what's next and push the boundaries of what's possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. We've got another great topic, two great speakers today, two great guests. But before we get started, as I did last week, I just want to make mention about the horrific situation in Ukraine. I, in my entire lifetime, have not seen anything like this, from the military actions taking place in Ukraine to global response. Our thoughts and our prayers are out to all those folks in Ukraine, and we each and every day try to figure out how we can give help. With that, this week's topic, 5G, indoor, outdoor, wireless telecommunications. My career, I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cellular communications has gone from something as simple as being able to make a phone call, and use text, and all of a sudden be able to listen to music, and watch movies, and everybody knows that the cell phone and mobile phone is now something that almost can't exist without. And so as we enter this area of 5G, the issue is, how is it different from 4G? And what I've heard is latency is better and speed is better. And so we want to make sure that you fully understand what's going on with getting a note that my sound is not correct. If that's the case, why don't we bring Howard in? We'll get that taken care of, and then I'll be back.
Hey guys, good to have you with us. While Jim's getting his mic sorted out, just want to thank you guys for both being on the show. On this topic, an important one. Hey, Nick, Joe, why don't you just take a couple of a minute or two, introduce yourselves, a little bit about you and your companies, and your relationship to the topic. Why don't we start with you, Nick?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good day, I should say. Nicholas Stello, Senior Vice President of Technology Infrastructure at Vornado Realty. As you can see, Vornado has over 26 million square feet of space and property that we own and manage, mostly concentrated in New York City. We have a large single property in Chicago called the Merchandise Mart, and several properties in and around San Francisco. The big project recently is the renaissance of the Penn Plaza district. There is approximately 12 to 15 million square feet of a campus-like setting in this heart of New York City that we've partnered partially with the state of New York to help redevelop. In addition to our own properties, the Farley building was a joint venture of sorts, and we continue to make strides and upgrades in and around that fantastic location.
Great, thank you. Joe, a little bit about you and Related in 5G.
Thanks, Howard. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Rich. I'm CIO here at Related, based in New York. We are a owner, operator, developer, fund manager. Flip to the next slide. And we operate in many different asset classes of real estate. You can see the slides, but the company got its original start and is still a core competency in affordable housing. So it's very important to our mission as well as all of our asset classes. Some quick numbers here, so you could see about Related, the size of the portfolio. You can see we have quite a few residential units with 55,000 affordable units. With the largest single private affordable operator in the U.S. And like Vornado, Related mostly self-manages most of our assets. as well.
All right, guys, does my sound a little better?
Much
Much
better.
better.
All right. You know, those bugs in the networks, have no idea. So, Howard, thanks for filling in. Guys, as I was saying, we've been through a number of iterations on telecommunications leading up to 5G. And there's been an awful lot of hype over the last 3 years. We had a 5G pavilion at Realcomm and IBCon in 2019, last time we were in Nashville. So from your perspective, let's start with Nick. Give me your high-level overview on what is 5G and how is it different than everything we've seen before?
Well, 5G to me, Jim, is probably the most hyped new technology I've ever heard of in my lifetime. There's never been anything like this in terms of going from 3G to 4G. That was pretty much of a no moment issue. But look, 5G is a game changer in terms of what can be done and what can be possible with the different types of 5G, right?
Right.
We believe that it is an important technology we're bringing to our portfolio. There are different flavors that we'll get into in a little bit of 5G, but look, we believe our tenants are interested in having it. We are very interested in providing it for them. It's important for them. It's important to us, and we started, a rollout of an indoor 5G program a while back, and we're making some strides. But since it's still relatively new, the ability to do an installation and get the equipment, quite frankly, to begin with, has been a little bit of a struggle. The 5G needs to be on the outside, which is the macro, and then the carriers will start permitting the indoor cellular systems, which we have many, to be 5G capable or 5G equipment ready. And we're sort of running into some difficulties in getting some equipment from some large carriers, but we're making some strides. Again, we believe it's important, and we're just doing our best to fulfill the needs of our tenants.
Well, if you think about it, cellular communications, you think about your cell phone as you're driving down the freeway. But statistics will show you that most mobile communications takes place inside buildings. So it's kind of ironic that the carriers spent all their time, money, energy on the outside when most of the activity was going on the inside. And I can't tell you the number of high-profile big buildings I've been in where I'm on the 5th floor and my cell phone doesn't work, right? So I was under the impression that one of the things I liked about 5G was that it was going to focus a little bit more on the inside, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Joe, how about you? High level, what is 5G to you?
So, like Nick, I'm also stunned by the amount of buzz around 5G and the amount of marketing around 5G that the carriers are doing, despite where exactly we are. And so, if we talk about 5G, I think there's 3 varieties: low band, mid band, high band, or ultra millimeter wave. Now, the lower bands are kind of the souped up LTE, souped up 4G, but 5G has great potential in terms of lower latency, higher bandwidth, more capacity, incredible potential. And so where we are today, I'll throw out a quick anecdote. In New York City, a lot of the carriers, most of the carriers have what's called 5GE, and I think that's just a different marker for LTE. And I received a phone call yesterday from one of our senior execs, said, how do I switch 5G off because it doesn't work in the back of a car in New York City? So we had to switch down to LTE to standardize. So that's the state of the macro network. It's just an example. But where we're going in building, many of us for commercial office buildings have built out extensive DAS networks in our buildings. And the good news is for 5G, there's going to be some work to upgrade to the low band and mid band 5G, and that's where the focus and the energy is right now. The high band, millimeter wave, ultra wideband, if you will, 5G is something very different. It has the greatest potential, but it's also in the current state of the technology, it's the greatest cost because it's a completely different architecture. Most people today will tell you if you're going to architect for a millimeter wave, you have to rip and replace your DAS system because the number of antennas are different, the types are different,
See, that's not what the market. That's not what the marketing suggests.
Yeah, the marketing, a lot of the marketing you see ultra wideband, that's the macro, that's the super speeds, if you will, on the outside. The inside, to Joe's point, he's exactly right. Our push for 5G indoors is to upgrade our existing 4G LTE systems that can utilize the low band 5G equipment, right?
At a high level, though, it's a little unfair to talk about all these features and functions and bundle it all in the big conversation, but forget to talk about the differences between these different technologies. Joe
but look, it's working because we're all speaking about it, right?
Right.
But there's differences.
I also think that we are, when it comes to the millimeter wave and the high band, we're in the first inning of a 9-inning ball game. I think this is the current state of the technology, the current state of the equipment. I expect that to evolve over time. The other thing that we talked about is the use case. What's the use case for in-band millimeter wave? It's very theoretical at this point, and it's not completely clear to really anybody at this point. I think it will be in a couple of years. And
so you're leading right into my next question. So we'll start with Nick. Why, as a building owner, do you need to be worried about 5G today?
Well, again, I think it goes back to, and I think Joe and I are in alignment here. The tenants, if they want, whether it's an amenity or a requirement. Which, look, years ago the in-building cells started as an amenity, right? And now it's a requirement. If they wish to have 5G on their phones, they're asking for 5G. They want it because of what we're talking about. They want it because of the influx of marketing and things like that. We have very, very, very few tenants that have the millimeter wave. The separate system for their specific needs in order for them to conduct business, right, has to be approved by the carrier. They're very conservative when they give these out. It's very expensive. It was picked up, I believe, from the tenant. It was a tenant cost. The carriers don't really want to push a lot of indoor millimeter wave systems out there. And again, to Joe's point, we're in the first inning. Even the low band, which is just a step up from the 4G, we're still having difficulties, and it's not the typical or recent supply chain issues. It's that the technology is just coming out in order for us to get it into our buildings.
Now, Joe, anything to add on to that as far as the why?
No, I agree with Nick. It's got to be driven by our customers. Right? It's like everything else. The demand has to be driven by the customers, and as customers see a use case for 5G, because it's a complete, and again, the current state of the technology, it's a complete rebuild. We'll work with those customers.
Got it. So that's actually a good segue into our next conversation, which is the tenants, but that's probably going to take a little longer. Let's take a brief break for a commercial, and when we come back, we're going to dive into what the tenants are asking for in these very, very high-profile buildings.
The wireless industry is changing fast, and Halo is leading the way as the new intelligent, cutting-edge leader in neutral host infrastructure. Serving all vertical markets, Class A office, hospitality, residential, healthcare, stadiums, and large public venues. Delivering state-of-the-art technology solutions with future upgrades to accommodate the highest demands of mobile users and new 5G applications. A trusted and proven partner to all wireless carriers, REITs, owners, and developers. The Halo team is leading the industry with the highest standards in mobile and wireless communication. A trusted and proven partner to all wireless carriers. The future of wireless is now, and Halo's full-service turnkey solutions are solving our clients' communication challenges today and in the future. Halo, connecting the wireless world.
All right, guys. Actually, before we go on to the tenant conversation, I'm going to take a quick left turn. I got a question from one of our audience that was right in line with what we were talking about before the show started, which was the relationship between 5G millimeter and Wi-Fi. So any quick comments on, for somebody who's looking to build out a big infrastructure on the difference, what you guys have seen so far?
Sure.
That's good.
I think in terms of Wi-Fi 6 and millimeter wave, I think they're completely different products for different applications because of the nature of the amount of bandwidth and capacity of both of them. Now, Wi-Fi 6 is obviously a vast improvement over the current state of Wi-Fi 5. We're absolutely looking forward to that. Millimeter wave is many steps above that. It's also further out into the technology curve than Wi-Fi 6 is. To give you an example, it's called 6 because it operates on a 6 gigahertz range. So if you take 1 to 100 as the range for wireless communications, just as an example, with Wi-Fi 6 operating at 6 gigahertz, the millimeter wave range is about 24 to 67 gigahertz. It's much higher up the scale, which will allow for a lot more applications to it. So it could be a competing application, but I think there are applications that don't exist today that just won't work on Wi-Fi 6 in the future.
But it could also, if I may, it could also be a stepping block, if you will, to millimeter, right? So it's, as Joe said, the speeds are much improved and the security is better. But when you get to millimeter and that frequency, the security is a really big deal, which doesn't, the Wi-Fi 6 doesn't afford you the level of security, the full encryption, if you will, of a millimeter, FCC licensed band.
So with these different these different wireless technologies that offer different features, functions, capacities, and to Joe's point, different timelines as far as practical availability, isn't your job pretty tough as far as juggling when to get in and where to enter in this next generation of wireless communications?
Yeah, look, I mean, for us, Jim, we've looked at the millimeter wave option, and for large spaces with large numbers of people, it makes sense, right? And that's not the entire building. It just, doing the entire building just doesn't make any sense. And I don't even know if we'd be permitted from the carriers to do that, right? So I think our lane in which to drive is relatively limited. We have the low band 5G for indoor right now. We could also deploy 5G millimeter, the ultra high speed, but the throughput is extremely high. The coverage isn't great in very specific areas with it's a different physical layer, and it's expensive, right? But right now, in terms of capacity, I just don't think there's anything other than what we're doing for the near future, right? To Joe's point, first inning, it will keep changing.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm old enough to have been there when we were leaving mini computers and moving into distributed PC networks. And I understand the pull and the push and the pull of existing technologies and the promise of future technologies. It's not easy. It's a delicate beam or to walk. Let's pivot a little bit back to the tenants. So we got the marketing a little bit ahead of where it should be. We got the reality of different technologies working or not working with each other. Has the marketing worked on the tenants? I mean, are they coming to you guys saying we need this or else? Joe, you want to start this one?
Sometimes. I mean, larger tenants are more sophisticated, educated, sometimes more educated than we are, and they're not demanding. They're demanding the coverage. Necessarily 5G, not as much. Some smaller tenants are demanding it, and we can accommodate for that. But we're not seeing demand for millimeter wave kind of installations yet. And like Nick said, it will be on a tenant by tenant, customer by customer basis.
Yeah. And if I may, Jim, you had mentioned going back a few years. So when we started this endeavor 10, 12 years ago, probably even longer, people would ask about cellular coverage in general. And it would be, do you have it? It'd be nice to have, right? So that's done a 180-degree turn. We want it, but now they're asking, could we have 5G? It's not a demand. But, we just like we did at the beginning, we'd like to provide them with what we can. And, again, I agree with Joe here. It is not a hard and fast demand. The requirement of in-building cellular is more of a demand. It's a nice to have with 5G, with the exception of the very few tenants that may have millimeter because of their specific needs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I've seen, I think, a grand total of three commercial office leases that were specific for coverage in the tenant space over the past 15 years. I expected that to be all leases, but it didn't happen that way.
Right.
It really didn't happen in our major markets.
I can't tell you how grateful I am to have guys like you who can tell us what's going on the ground, right? Because, again, we had a 5G pavilion and we're still 1,000% behind it. Believe me, we love advancing technologies. But for smaller companies who may not have the resources like you guys and these big projects, these big companies, they're doing their best to understand this stuff. So I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us, because we consider you the leaders, and it's important for the industry. We're going to run out of time, so I got a couple more questions I want to get to real quick. For years, go up the 5th floor, cell phone doesn't work, and there's a ton of finger pointing. How come my cell phone doesn't work in this Class A office building in this big city? And it's the carriers point the finger at the owners at the carriers. What is going on in that conversation? I mean, who's going to pay for this infrastructure required inside buildings? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll start. I think it depends. I think it depends on the venue. It depends on the landlord. I'll give an answer that might not be an answer. I apologize, but it really does depend. The shift for funding these capital projects has absolutely been from the carriers to the landlords, right? Or anyone other than the carrier. If there is a tenant in a building that wants to install a system just for themselves, if they have 1, 2, 3 floors, what have you, the carriers will, likely acquiesce and do that. But, when it comes to who pays, it really still depends on what the venue is, what the value also of that property and the tenants within that property to the carrier may be.
Joe, thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, Related is a developer and operator in many asset classes, and for many years now, the carriers have not been interested in funding in a multi-tenant purely multi-tenant residential building. So we've been funding that. It's very different on the commercial office side. And, for years, certainly the carriers have been spending their own capital in our assets. I agree with Nick that party is very quickly coming to an end. And, that's a hard conversation for guys like us to have internally.
Yep,
because
I get it.
Our senior management doesn't understand why.
Right.
What's the difference? So it's fine. It's a conversation. But I also understand it. Again, going back to 5G, if we're running a private network at that point, it could be potential opportunities for us as owners and operators as well, and that would be true of any size real estate developer that has to put in a private network. If you have to pay for it, you should be able to monetize that asset. And I think there's going to be new revenue streams that are available based on the technology.
And we've been trying to be a conduit for years to get this conversation advanced, because I think we can agree on a few things. Telecommunications is not slowing down. Mobility is not slowing down. People carry cell phones with them 24 hours a day. They need those cell phones to work inside buildings. I think everybody on both sides can agree on that. And I would do whatever possible to bring all parties to the table to look at the cost side of this and make sure our cell phones work on the 1st floor as well as the 50th floor of any building in the world. I think that carrier conversation has to continue. We're going to reach out to them. We hope to have them at Realcomm and IBCon, and this conversation is going to go much deeper at the conference because it's an important one. All right, we got a couple minutes left real quick. Again, thanking you guys for not just being some of the smartest guys on the planet because of the companies you work for and who you are, but be willing to share that. What do you say to those smaller building owner and operators who don't have the budgets, the time, the resources to figure this stuff out? Small to medium-sized real estate owners. Nick, we'll start with you. What do you say to them?
Yeah. So look, if the goal is to get coverage for this building, right? And it's not in New York City, it's not a 2.5 million square foot property. One of the things that might be useful is to understand your tenant roster, right? Understand and reach out to the carriers and ask them if, for the tenants themselves, and ask them if they have a larger nationwide contract with the corporate office that might have other offices across, the state or the country, in order to help leverage them bringing in their products and services to that building. I found that to be helpful in some of the things that we've done.
Joe?
I think for smaller, if I'm a smaller operator, developer, taking on 3 carriers at the same time is quite challenging. Taking on 1 is challenging. 3 is really challenging. You're just not going to have the resources. So, third-party operators like Halo, who we had earlier, are a great option. And if you could also work with them to try to create that revenue stream in the future for you. It also depends on what your business strategy is on the development. Are you developing, leasing, and selling? Is it a long-term hold? It really depends. But to Nick's point, whatever you're doing from a real estate perspective, you better have coverage indoors.
You better have, yeah. And from our perspective, the Realcomm IBCon community, we have no dog in this hunt. All we want is for mobile devices to work inside buildings for a lot of reasons. So if there's anybody listening, a smaller organization, reach out to us. We can maybe get a group of you together and approach, these companies together as a group as opposed to on your own. I don't want to say the word consortium. That sounds too complicated, but we're going to try to act as a conduit in this conversation, and because we think it's important. So, guys, we are out of time, and we didn't even get to CBRS, IoT, immersive, all the other things that are going to be a result of 5G and beyond. So, could I ask you to leave the idea open on coming back and continuing the conversation?
Sure, would love to.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then again, we're going to be covering this topic in detail at the event, and we're going to have the vendors there, hopefully the carriers, the building owners. So we're going to have all the stakeholders in the same room. Hopefully we can advance this conversation a little bit faster. So as always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for being here, and you guys have a great day and a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. With that, let's bring on Howard Berger in the news. Boy, this week was a busy week. It seemed like all the news really popped up, and we got a lot more things going on. And Howard, your job was harder this week, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can bring us up to speed.
Oh, thanks, Jim. And Joe, Nick, I thought it was a really important conversation. I think your perspectives as owner-operators really clarified a lot of the confusion around 5G. Looking forward to our next conversation and furthering the discussion. Thanks for joining us today. So first, a few news items from our weekly briefing. It goes out every Thursday morning in our advisory. So a few weeks ago on Live, we met with David Nussbaum. He was founder, CEO of Portal. It's an LA-based company taking holoportation to the next level. And now, as a technology, telepresence, it's been around for decades. In fact, we even showcased it by teleporting one of our keynote speakers from London to Dallas on the main stage at Realcomm in 2001. Now, I got to tell you, 2 decades has made a big difference. And what David has done with this technology will absolutely blow your mind. So for our lead story this week, we've given you a link to the show. You can see for yourself how David's cutting edge technology works, how it's going to be impacting our industry and the world in the future. It's about 20 minutes. Definitely worth it. Happy watching. Also, I think we have a new candidate for the most technologically advanced hotel in the world, and it's right here in the good old USA. So Lake Nona, it's a 17 square mile, very visionary community close to the Orlando International Airport. They just opened the Wave Hotel in December, and it has some very interesting smart technologies, including View Smart windows, which have been installed in all 234 guest rooms, plus all the luxury suites. Now, the floor-to-ceiling View Smart windows use AI to automatically respond to outdoor light, and it eliminates the needs for blinds. So the developer Tavistock, their president, Nick Boucher, said, our partnership with Vue is a critical part of our strategy to reimagine the built environment to improve how people live, travel, and work. So for those of you joining us, actually coming in to join us in Orlando in June, it looks like we'll probably be setting up a back of the house tour of the hotel. So stay tuned. There'll be more. And next story, a year following its acquisition of Zkit, a virtual fitting room platform, Walmart started rolling it out to users of the Walmart app and website. Now, with their Choose My Model feature, customers are now able to select from 50 models of clothing based on their height, body shape, skin tone, to get a better sense of how clothing will actually look on them. That's been a problem with online clothes shopping. You just never know how something's going to actually look in real life. So this way, shoppers can get an immersive, personalized digital experience that will better replicate actual physical shopping. And this will impact the new omni-channel trends in retail. So keep an eye on Walmart's tech initiatives, as they're planning to be rolling out even more features that'll further enhance the virtual shopping experience. Now, finally, I want to shout out to one of our longtime Realcomm advisors, Susan Lilly Girock, for her promotion as Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at WashREIT. Now, with WashREIT's big emphasis lately on data and technology initiatives, and now that they are a multifamily owner and operator, they've announced that Susan, who was CIO, has been promoted to Senior Vice President. Now, WashREIT owns about 8,200 residential units in the Washington, D.C. metro area and the Southeast, along with commercial space in D.C. metro area. Susan joined WashREIT, I think it was back in April 2016 as VP IT and CIO. Has about 25 years of experience, various technology roles spanning real estate, consulting, application services, and manufacturing organizations. We just want to say congratulations, Susan.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Yeah, and I will tell you that she is one serious professional, and it's good to see her advancing in her career.
Been a great contributor and supporter, of our everything we do.
And one other thing I would mention on your first article is watch that video. I mean, incredible conversation, incredible technology, sneak preview. We're going to be dealing with this a lot at the conference, not just talking, but showing and doing. And if you want to try to understand immersive experiences and where the hybrid world's going and what employees are going to expect when they get back into those offices, you're really going to want to follow this because it's not going away. That's how
it's next level stuff. Yeah, check it out. Yeah,
you say that, but we had it in 2001, so we're now going on 21 years. I think it is now positioned to take off for a lot of reasons.
It's evolved. It's evolved pretty nicely. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Howard, thank you so much. You have a great day and a great weekend. Be well.
You too, Joe.
All right. Before we wrap and I talk about next week's show, let's hear from our final sponsor.
Technology has changed the way we live. Emerging technologies are erasing the boundaries that separate people, places, and ideas.
For more than 25 years, Crown Castle has been building and maintaining the infrastructure that supports this new way of life.
Towers keep us connected,
instantly delivering voice, text, and data to the devices we depend on.
Small cells improve coverage and set the stage for new advancements, like the Internet of Things,
smart city technologies,
and 5G.
Tying it together is our nationwide network of fiber,
bringing the entire world to us in the blink of an eye.
Here is where we find ourselves,
providing the infrastructure that new innovation requires.
The space where transformative ideas thrive.
The connections that keep communities together, safe and growing.
We're Crown Castle.
The pathway to possible.
All right. With that, I would like to wrap today's episode. A big shout out to Nick and Joe for giving that incredible insight to our audience on 5G. That conversation is going to continue. Thanks to our sponsors and thanks to our crew for making it another great episode. And next week, continuing that theme of virtual immersive experience, what to expect in the office, we got a real treat for you. One of our longtime friends, Adrian Velicescu from the Standard Vision, is going to talk to us about some things that you can't even imagine. We actually had one of our hybrid events in Adrian's studio in Los Angeles. I just heard he's moved to a new studio on Melrose. He's got all the latest and greatest. You're not going to want to miss that episode because immersive is coming to an office, a mall, a mixed-use project, a residential apartment near you. So with that, thank you to everybody. You have a great day, great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Be well, and peace to our friends in Ukraine.